All right, guys. I think we are back. I think we're live. I hope we are. Back with our fourth episode of In the Garage. We're back here at the Craft Emporium, brought to you by Ohio Radon. I want to thank Paul Newland, our sponsor. Paul's a great friend and a great supporter of local athletics. He's started a great business the last few years. Comes to your house for a pretty reasonable price. So check your home for radon. Radon is what he describes as silent killer, second leading cause of lung cancer. He'll take a look at your numbers. If you have an issue, he'll take care of that really easily and pretty cheap. And if you don't have it, he'll let you know that, and you'll be out the door for even cheaper, and you have the peace of mind to know that you're good. He did it at my house, and my numbers were good, so we moved on, and it was nice to know that I didn't have an issue with a 100-year-old house. That was kind of surprising. So got Brian Harmon back for another week here at the Craft Emporium. Things continue to move into the new year. It's ready to get this pub off the ground. We're just kind of in a waiting game right now, Harmon.
Yep, it's just tied up with the state of Ohio liquor control. They're going through their due diligence as they do, and we're just waiting on the paperwork.
We don't have quite the crowd that we normally draw on Thursday nights. The boys are hurting a little bit from yesterday, New Year's Day, the holidays. Big win. We're going to get into the Ohio State smackdown of Oregon in the Rose Bowl. Also joined by original co-host Jack Varner is back from Wittenberg. He is in town. He's been working at Froggy's, making some money to pay the bills down in Wittenberg. Actually going there tomorrow to give them some of that money, Jack.
A lot of that money.
Good to have you back. Good to see you again. We've come a long way from the school and then later my garage on Palmer Avenue, and now we're at the big time at the Craft Emporium. What do you think of the new setup?
Oh, great. We're moving up in the world.
We're on Facebook Live. People might be able to chime in and give us some comments. Got Coach Hoyt Buckingham on the controls. He's told us that we are live on YouTube and on Facebook. We appreciate all the help he does because we are pretty ignorant when it comes to technology, so he keeps us afloat. So 2 weeks ago, we didn't have a show last Thursday. I was actually in Detroit, Michigan, watching the Quick Lane Bowl, which was a 5-overtime affair, Pittsburgh versus Toledo. So we didn't have a podcast last week, the day after Christmas. 2 weeks ago, we sat here and we were trying to figure out who the next coach at Ohio State was going to be. Ryan Day was going to be fired, and Mike Vrabel, maybe Marcus Freeman, was going to be the next head football coach, and what a difference 2 weeks makes. Brian Harmon, you were probably one of the more vocal Ryan Day criticizers.
Absolutely.
Where do you stand the day after Rose Bowl victory?
Well, he didn't beat Michigan last night, but you can't deny that this team is playing at a level that we probably haven't seen a college team play in a while. Not just Ohio State, but Alabama or otherwise. He's got them firing on all cylinders. They are aggressive. They are playing fast and confident. And this is the team that we thought we were getting this year in the last 2 weeks. And all the props to him. I wanted to be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. And I hope he keeps right it on.
What changed?
I think sometimes when your back is against the wall and you feel like you have a chance with no pressure, you can only go up. And I think we saw it against when they played against Georgia in that Sugar Bowl
2 years ago.
Yeah, that they just came out and played completely different. They were loose. They were flying around. This has a similar feel just over a period of 2 games. I just think they're playing aggressive, and he almost feels like he's playing with house money.
Is it fair to say that Ohio State and Ryan Day have more of a Michigan problem than they have a football problem?
Absolutely.
It's kind of specific to that game.
It feels like they're putting too much. It's crushing them. The pressure is for that one game, but everybody else they feel like they've got it pretty well figured out.
Jack, you've been known to carry a pitchfork or two in your life. I remember you as a young child even calling for coaches' jobs. So I haven't really talked to you much. Where did you stand on Ryan Day post-Michigan?
At the moment, I was all fired up, but realistically, I never wanted him fired. I think the thing people got to understand about Ryan Day is He's a top 10 coaches, X's and O's wise. But he's a top 2, 3 recruiter in college football. And I think that you look at that Michigan game and I think there's a lot of people that don't understand football or don't know it to the full extent. There's a lot of things that happened in that Michigan game. Like people calling Ohio State a soft football team. I think that's a stretch. Michigan got 10 points off 5 yards. We hand the ball at the 2-yard line, they score. We punt the ball and they get 5 yards and they kick a field goal. 10 out of 13 points off 5 yards. I think the biggest thing is I lost where I was going with that.
Well, you didn't think that they were a soft. You didn't think the criticism that they were soft it was fair, and I agree. I feel like that was a criticism 3 years ago.
Yes.
We definitely felt like Michigan bullied us, but it's almost like the opposite. Is that Ohio State, and we don't need to go back down this too far, but they wanted to prove how tough they were and get into a phone booth fight, and to their own detriment. That we needed more of that Jeremiah Smith. Hey, throw it up.
He wanted to beat them at their game instead of just being Ohio State.
And that's where I lost where I was going, but I found it now. They were saying in that game, they lose their center, the best center in college football 2 weeks before.
Huge.
The snaps were a problem the whole game.
The snaps were a problem last night.
They were too. Yes.
It messes up the mesh of the play. Everything was thrown off. And then, obviously, they didn't. Will Howard absolutely got his brain smushed.
Yeah.
And obviously, Ohio State doesn't trust Devin Brown. They didn't want to put Devin Brown in the game. So they were
I
playing.
think rightfully so.
Yes, yeah. And they felt like, all right, our defense is playing lights out. Let's just run the ball. Let's not miss 2 field goals. I mean, they were trusting their kicker. They were trusting that their defense was playing lights out. Obviously, hindsight, you're like, okay, well, we should have thrown the ball down the field. But
So we've spent a lot of time in the last 24 hours talking about how, there almost needs to be a different approach. And some people don't want to hear this, and I think Harmon's probably one of them, that obviously the Michigan game is always going to be important for emotional reasons. But when it really, we're shifting towards an NFL philosophy with 12 teams, and I think we all agree that probably 12 is going to be 16 before we know it, then who knows what. So no different than, the Cincinnati Bengals don't have to beat the Baltimore Ravens. They want to beat the Ravens. It's a rival game, or the Browns if they're good. Do we need to really reconsider how we view that Michigan game? There's the emotional part of it. Hey, we want tradition. We want to beat them. But at the end of the day, you just have to win a certain amount of games to get in the playoffs, and if you do that, then you have a chance.
Yes and no. I definitely agree in terms of the structure. It doesn't matter as much, but the difference between the college game and the pro game is recruiting still matters.
Yeah.
And you have to put a wall around Ohio to be successful. If we recruit Ohio well, it makes it harder for them because they don't recruit nationally with the same ferocity that we do.
I feel like they're starting to pick that up recently.
They can now.
Yeah.
We've opened that door in a little bit. We've given them some traction with those wins, but that's the only counterpoint to that.
No, agreed. It doesn't occur in a vacuum in the same way that the NFL game does. I agree with that. So, Jack, are you surprised that Ohio State? Not only, obviously, I think we're all surprised that they just totally obliterated Tennessee and Oregon. Are you surprised that they won both games?
I'm not necessarily surprised they won both games. I am surprised they obliterated it. I am the biggest thing about Ryan Day is I'm surprised of how much the players buy into Ryan Day. You see the videos on Twitter, people going at people about saying Ryan Day's their coach, and that's cool to see. And then I think the biggest thing with Ohio State is they're just playing with swag. They played stiff against Michigan. They were nervous. They don't look nervous at all right now.
Well, Jay Clement makes a point there in the chat that he says, and this is a good point, that if you start to demean that game, the one thing, and this is to Jay's point, I know Harmon would agree with this, it's such a special game, the Ohio State-Michigan game. It's almost a gift to Ohio State and Michigan that only they own. And if you demean that, then you no longer have that gift as much. And then if you're not successful in the playoffs and you can't lean on that, because right now, this year, Michigan, they made their season. They had a very unsuccessful season. Now, obviously, beating the Buckeyes and beating Bama in the bowl game made a difference, but they made their entire season by beating us. If we were Indiana and they beat Indiana, it just wouldn't have had the same, impact on their program. And I feel like the Michigan program has gotten a shot of life. I think there was a chance they were going to keep backsliding, and if you follow their recruiting, it doesn't feel that way at all. They're recruiting at a high level, maybe higher than they have for a while.
Yeah. This was the last 2 games. being massive underdogs, this has been the best thing for Sharon Moore you could have asked for.
And the reality is, guys like our age, and Jack's a lot younger, it's going to be a lot of years before we're all gone, God willing. But we're always going to value that rivalry, and it's just we just have to approach it different. Maybe from a standpoint of, does a guy get fired? I mean, if Ryan Day wins the national title this year, which Las Vegas says he's even money to do it,
right?
And he goes and loses to Michigan next year, are we going to hear? I mean, I think that he's safe, right? I mean, a national title gives him a bulletproof vest for several years. So we can all agree that 5 straight losses to Michigan doesn't get you fired at Ohio State if you're winning playoff games, and that's the nice thing about the playoff system.
Yeah, and there was a comment there for a minute. Winning national titles are rare unless you're Nick Saban. You can't always redeem yourself every year by losing that. If you lose that game, you can't just say, well, we can just win a national title and then all this goes away. I mean, those are rare. So you still have to value that game for a multitude of reasons. But I think what Ryan Day and that staff figure out now is we just have to be the best version of Ohio State, and that's going to be good enough most years.
It was nice to see, Jack, to your point. I've always liked Ryan Day, and I've met him. Not that I know him, but I've met him, and he does appear, by all intents and purposes, to be a great guy, a great family man, a great representative. Some of us struggled with Urban Meyer. I struggled with Urban Meyer because I don't think I respect Urban Meyer as a man. I'm not saying he's all bad, but I think his ethics were questionable. I think he proved that over several jobs.
Yeah.
I respect Ryan Day's ethics, and as an Ohio State alumni, that matters to me. I want to have a coach that I can look at and say, I'm proud he's there. And also the Tavian St. Clair angle, we've talked about that in the past. As someone that cares about Tavian, which of course, Jack, you were his center for several years, so you care about him and are good friends with him. We want the best situation for Tavian St. Clair. And coming into college with a new coach, now it could be good. I mean, you never know, but Ryan Day's his guy. And we'd like to see him go to Ohio State with stability and things that he can expect, and then, away we go. But so looking ahead, obviously nobody expected Ohio State to just absolutely running clock Oregon. I did think it was interesting. Last night in our garage, a lot of us watched. Harmon was a part of that crew. Jack, you stopped by for a minute. We saw the trauma that Ohio State fans own in that game. We get up 34-0. Well, I declare victory. I mean, it's over. It is over in my mind. I know there's no path forward where Oregon loses. There's multiple people in the garage, and Jay Clement, who's in the chat, was one of them. They were scared to death the Buckeyes were going to lose the game. Oregon scores twice unanswered, and if you would have tested the morale in that garage, we were in a dogfight. And I never felt that way, but you see guys that they're on edge. They think that
a little PTSD.
Yeah, like, hey, this thing is we got something to defend here, and Jay's, I'm sure he owns that. But looking ahead, Texas. So certainly a flawed Texas team, but when you talk brand value, doesn't get much bigger.
Well, they're extremely talented.
No doubt.
Make no mistake. They probably have more talent than the two teams that we've played up to this point, especially defensively. They will be a challenge. They're physical. They're fast. They've got some guys. Ryan Wingo is a guy that was very close to committing to Ohio State, but maybe even been a soft verbal at one point. Obviously, Quinn Ewers was on campus for a year. This is a very talented football team. I'm confident that Ohio State should win this football game because the level that they're playing at right now, I think they're simply unbeatable at the college level.
Does that scare you a little bit, though? I'm always
that they can maintain that over
like,
4 games.
Like
you're
I
damn
almost
right.
honestly, as we're winning 34-0, I'm almost screaming, "Pump the brakes!"
Sure.
Don't go and score every point you got.
Right.
Tonight.
Well, yeah, you don't want to show too much at that point because you want to, from a scheme perspective, you want to hold some things back and show some new things. But
and my argument was when Oregon scored at the half, I said it last night that I thought that was kind of good for Ohio State to calm them down a little bit. Like, hey, you actually still have to play football in the second half. Don't go in and pop champagne just yet. But, I think it's going to be a great game. Obviously, I won't rule out that Ohio State may just come out and boat race them, because at the end of the day, Jeremiah Smith, I mean, there's nothing we could say that would be an exaggeration.
He's the best. Look, I've watched this program for 44 years. I did the math with Bill Tipple today. And when I say watch, I mean obsess.
Yeah.
For 44 years, he's the best freshman player I've seen in those 44 years.
And it's really not close.
It's not close. He is an absolute unicorn specimen. He's big, he's fast, he's got every skill set you're asking for. He is if you were to create a wide receiver, a football player in a laboratory, you would come out with Jeremiah Smith, and he is unbelievable.
It was obvious they had took a concerted effort to get him the ball early in different ways.
Yes.
You know, they were putting him in motion, they were putting him in the backfield, running some of the play action stuff just
Which
to
is
him.
very much a Chip Kelly thing. Chip uses motion a lot, and that's where I like to see that creativity that we weren't seeing earlier in the year. You know,
If we get by Texas, you know, it's crazy that on the other half you've got Penn State and you've got Notre Dame, two Midwestern schools.
Yeah.
How quickly the balance of power has shifted in college football. That it would be unheard of that three Midwestern schools, until really last year with Michigan winning it, outside of Ohio State, nobody else could compete with the SEC, not consistently. I mean, Michigan State was getting boat raced. Notre Dame was getting boat raced. Michigan was getting boat raced.
Yeah.
We were the only team. Ohio State was the only team that was constructed to match up. And obviously, we talked about it off air. NIL and the transfer portal has to be part of the answer here. Nick Saban retiring has to be a little part of it too, because when you knock Alabama back down to human, that hurts that league. And Georgia's, you know, it's hard to sustain, you know, what they've done, and so they're down a little. And the only team they have left is not an SEC team. I mean, it's traditional.
I think what this has shown is what we have probably been saying and hoping that we were right, is that this was Alabama and Georgia and sometimes LSU and everybody else. Yeah. And when those two are down, the entire conference is down. It's been a lot of years since the Midwest has been the true power of. You got to go back to probably the early to mid '70s for the Midwest, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan, to Nebraska, Penn State, to be the power of football. But yeah, 50 years probably.
And there goes Ole Miss representing the SEC, and possibly not quite a pick six, but it goes from scoring to go ahead of Duke to throwing a pick in the end zone. I think we'd all agree that we'd love to see Lane Kiffin given some humble pie. You know, Lane was very adamant, along with his buddy Kirk Herbstreit, that the second-tier SEC schools should have gotten in the playoffs. And boy, these playoffs and the bowl games have proven that they had absolutely no business. And everybody wanted to complain about SMU. They wanted to complain about Indiana. The reality is all these teams are getting blown out. So someone was going to get blown out. And also the top four seeds. You know,
correct. Don't leave them out.
The 5, 6, 7, and 8 are the teams that are in the semifinals.
Yeah.
If Ohio State beats Texas, which are certainly we all expect that to happen, I mean, you could argue that they will have an easier game in the finals with Penn State / Notre Dame. Would you agree with that?
I agree.
Jack does not.
It's Penn State or Notre Dame. Both those teams have played us. Notre Dame's played us last 2 years, and Penn State's played us this year. They gotta know us better.
Played us tough too. Yeah, I mean the Notre Dame game, we pull a rabbit out of a hat. It was famously during Dalton Mossbarger's wedding. I actually left the game, thinking that the ball game was over. So that's a good point. And Penn State, boy, it just doesn't feel like Penn State's constructed though to beat Ohio State right now. But yeah, give them another crack at it.
It's tough to be a team twice. It scares me.
Yeah, I'd rather play Notre Dame. I kind of feel that way.
Yeah.
So I think that everyone agrees. The last thing, and then we'll move into Jack. This expansion is an overwhelming success from the standpoint of the top four seeds all got beat. So someone brought that up. Actually, Paul Newland, our chief sponsor, Ohio Radon, sent me a text and talked about how many more titles would Ohio State have won over the last 30 years had we had a playoff. I mean, I think the answer is 4 or 5.
Yeah, we spitballed a little bit last night. I think you look at maybe 95, 96, 98, 2015. I mean, that's just 4 right off the top of the head. I could go back even further, but no doubt this is a success. This is what they should have been doing for the last 50 years. It hasn't been that hard to do. There's a lot of external pressures to keep the status quo, but I'm glad it's dead. And
It was just old money.
it's old money. It's bull money. They want relevance, and I'm glad that we've moved forward, and we'll get it figured out. It's not perfect, obviously. This year, when you 1 through 4 lose, that shows you've done something wrong, and it's they'll fine tune it. But this is a model that can succeed really well.
Well, I think pretty quickly the SEC and the Big Ten will push back on the auto 3 and 4 seed being conferences that aren't as tough. They don't belong there. That's an easy fix. And then,
Right
you know,
off the bat.
Josh Jones had said a few weeks ago on the podcast that maybe the reseeding thing,
Right.
and that makes some sense. The NFL does it where when there's an upset, then they jockey it around, and if you're a higher seed, you get a better path.
Automatic bid, but not an automatic buy.
And then how quick does it go to 16? I mean, that's
Well,
the only negative to that is I do like the 4 teams getting the bye because then it does make that regular season a little more. You're fighting for that. You want now. It didn't work out for any of those 4, but I still believe that's an aberration. I think teams want to bye generally. So, well, hey, it's so the next time we talk, we'll still have another show. You know, Ohio State doesn't play till Friday night.
right.
So Thursday night will actually be, we'll have a playoff game when we talk next Thursday. We'll be watching Notre Dame, Penn State. That'll be kicking off as we're talking, so that'll be nice.
Yep.
And then Friday, man, it's just such an amazing amount of great football to watch right now.
Blue Bloods.
Yeah.
You talk about Blue Bloods. These are programs that have 1,000 victories between them, 2,000 victories between them.
The ratings are going to be through the roof.
Absolutely. Yeah, they can talk about seedings and all that stuff, but when you're at the helm of this thing, and Ohio State, Penn State, Notre Dame, and Texas are in, you're happy.
No doubt. So, all right, well, we'll switch gears, Harmon. We'll let you roll. You
Thank
got a business to run. Jack, we'll start talking a little bit of Wittenberg here. Like I said, you're home from a long semester. You made it through. You made it through a season. I don't want to go back to your childhood, but I do want to go back just a little bit, talk about, so at what age do you decide you want to play college football?
After my junior year. I mean, obviously, always when you think about it, but
You want to play at Ohio State when you were 8 years old.
right. But after my junior year, I decided that I wasn't 100% sure, but I was going to attack that off season like I wanted to play college football, and then after my senior year, we'd see where the chips fall, and that's how I did it. I had a great off season my junior year, got a lot stronger, and then had a good senior year.
You looked at a few schools. Wittenberg pretty quickly was the favorite. Ohio Northern was kind of right there, would you say? And then a school out in Indiana, Marion.
Yeah, Indiana Wesleyan.
Indiana Wesleyan, that's
Yep.
right. But Wittenberg was always pretty much from the go towards the top. And a lot of tradition down there. Have won a ton of games. I consider myself an old Wittenberg fan from my childhood. I talk on our site a little bit. I'm an old Springfield News Sun junkie, and they covered the heck out of, and they don't anymore, I don't think, corporate takeovers. But back in the old days, Wittenberg football was covered closely by the News Sun. So I was reading those Sunday papers, and I knew who the players were. And I remember when Coach Fincham came in the probably mid-'90s, early to mid-'90s, and then he stepped down or was relieved there a few years back. Coach Collins is now the head coach. That is your head coach. Your offensive line coach, I think, is interesting. I don't know if most people know this, is Coach Davey. Coach Davey is the son of Bob Davey. Speaking of Notre Dame, Bob Davey was the head football coach at Notre Dame for several years, and then I believe New Mexico after that.
Yep, and then Coach Davey coached with them there for a little bit.
So you meet Coach Davey probably before you commit. Is that fair?
Yeah, he's the one that offered me and all that.
And can you tell us just a little bit about how that all worked?
Yeah, so basically the recruiting process, you're just reaching out to coaches, Twitter, email, whatever. And then Wittenberg was actually the first school that talked to me back. And then I started talking to Coach Davey. Like, they actually offered me going into my senior year and when I was still playing center. And then went down there on a visit, met Coach Davey, and then went down there on another visit with my dad, and we sat in a meeting room, basically, and said, this is what I see you as Coach Davey, and kind of showed me the offense. And then I was actually playing guard my senior year of high school, but they expected me to play center. And then at Wittenberg, the center, they're calling out all the protections and stuff. So he liked that. I was a somewhat smart football player and all that. And then, yeah, just being close to home and all that, I was pretty much set that once I realized I kind of knew I was going to be a Division III football player from the get-go. So once I made the decision I was going to play D3, I was like, Wittenberg's probably the place to be.
I want to talk about, so you get there, and I know we're fast forwarding. How many guys you come in with, your freshman class?
There was 100 freshmen in
That
the
is-
freshman class.
That is just a number that
Yeah.
it just amazes me.
17 linemen too.
And it's, and I know I'll do the talking on this, but obviously there is a money grab to this, or it's just, and I don't say that even as a judgment. It's just there is such an amount of kids that have this desire to play college football. Now, I think you probably agree that a lot of them maybe aren't sure that they really want to play college football.
Yeah.
They know that they want to post on social media that they're going to play college football, and
Right.
they want to get in the photo, and the whole family and everybody comes down and, hey, I'm playing college ball. But, what does that mean in the dog days of August? You don't know. But obviously 100 guys aren't lasting.
Right.
It's just not even sustainable. And that's part of their business model. That hey, they have to bring in this many people, pay that semester tuition, and know that 100 turns into. I mean, how many seniors were on the team this year?
I think there was like 15 dudes.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if that class started with 100, but it ends with 15.
Probably close. Yeah.
How many would you say you feel good about are paying that second semester tuition right now of those 100?
Oof. Less, about half, and then, but the thing is, there's a lot of cats that are saying, I'm going to finish the year out and not come back.
So you think already 100 became 50, give or take?
Maybe a little more than 50 right now, but by next year, I'll say we'll have like, the sophomore class will probably be like 30 dudes.
Which is just, it's a really, and the thing that, I always tell people when we talk college sports, and I've had kids, that coach say, hey, I want to play in college. I always say, look, anybody can go play college. Doesn't mean you're going to play.
Right,
Like, you'll
yeah.
be on the team, and we'll get into that. Obviously, I'm not putting you in that category.
Right.
There's a difference between, hey, I paid my tuition, I'm on the team, but here in 6 months, I'm going home and I'm never coming back.
Right.
You're not on that path. You're on the path of, hey, I'm going to Wittenberg and I want to get on the field. And talk, though, because I know some of these details, but talk us through a little bit. You get there early August.
Yeah.
Talk us through a little bit just how that felt.
I'm not gonna lie, it was a hard transition for me. Like, you leave home, you're away from your family for the first time, and then we get there and, our season starts in 3 weeks. So it's just getting thrown into the fire, fall camp. Our fall camp schedule was like 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., 10 p.m. straight. So it was just,
How many practices are in there?
so we'd have just one long practice, and then we could go back out in the field for a little bit. But it was meetings more than anything, because it was trying to get you to learn the offense like that, fast. And then we did some lifting stuff. The lifting stuff was kind of minimum. We did a conditioning test when we first got there. But yeah, as soon as we got pads, I think my 4th day there, we were hitting like right away, and there was a lot of hitting.
What was the first moment that you put your hands on someone and felt a difference from what you'd ever?
I don't know if I felt it in the moment. It was the after practice where I was like, holy. Like, I always, like, high school games, everybody's putting the ice on and stuff. I never did that because I was never that sore. But after,
that's for show.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. But after my first college practice, it was just like, dang, my body hurts like a little bit. And then, especially after the first week of full contact and all that, especially being on scout team and all that, you feel it different in your body. Just get hit by 21-year-olds versus 14-year-olds. It's a
How
big
much
difference.
did they protect you in drills in those first days? I mean, in one-on-one type stuff. I mean,
Zero.
just by if you're against a starting senior, that's just your numbers up and you're going against him.
Yeah, well,
It's not like in high school where we'd keep the freshmen kind of like, hey, Jack, jump out of there. Let's get a different guy in.
yeah, well, I don't know. This is off the air, but the first day.
It is actually on the air, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Just so we're clear.
If Wittenberg coaches are listening, I apologize.
If they're listening, then we're on to great things.
Our first day, we just had helmets, no pads, like acclimation day or whatever. did not matter. We were full hitting against the ones and all that. First of all, that hurts your chest. Getting hit in the chest with no pads, I was like, wow. But yeah, there was no. All right, Jack, you're going to go against freshman Billy Bob.
Right.
No, you're going against the 3-year starter, all conference dude right away. Which I think it's good for you. Just get thrown in the fire. People find out if they're about it or not. Yeah.
Now, is there a moment in there, if you're being honest, where you're like, maybe this is maybe I'd rather just be a student?
I don't know about the student part. There was definitely moments. You get jerked around a lot. I didn't know what position I was playing for a long time. I played tight end, tackle, guard, center. I was the second team tight end for a second there. I got in the mix, and then people get healthy. I had a lot of things where I pinched a nerve in my shoulder. I sprung my ankle this year, and I was like, I never missed a practice. I never went to the trainer, but I was definitely like, I don't know if I was there like this. I don't want to do this, but I was like, this sucks, kind of.
And you probably then realize why so many guys drop off.
Oh, for sure,
and your level of commitment to it, your level of wanting to be there was different. And I've always known that. Like, I would say, people would ask me last year, like, what do you think? And I would say, well, Jack's going to, you never know, because there's always things that can happen. I've always said girls are one thing. Like, that's the big, wild card with kids that go to college is you fall in love, and, that can change everything. But besides that, I knew you were committed and you would do well. Whether you'd be a star and I have always assumed that you would eventually start there, just because it is different on the O-line. If you're putting in the work, now obviously you have to be good enough, but you can build yourself into it a little bit. Plus, would you agree, and something I've said, they struggle to have linemen as much as they do skill guys, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Would you say the linemen in particular are the ones struggling in those early days?
Well, I can give you this example. We have things called Fast Fridays. So it's like you just go out there, just helmets. It's an hour long. It's like a walkthrough, but everything's run through. Our last Fast Friday of the year, I was on scout team O-line. Our last Fast Friday, it was me and one other freshman left on the scout team O-line. Everybody else.
Out of 17 guys.
Yeah. Now, some of those dudes, we had a couple freshmen that were on the second team, so they didn't do the scout team stuff. But yeah.
You lost a lot.
Probably 10 dudes.
I think big guys naturally struggle more. I think they're battling their weight. They're battling conditioning. And the line is, the offensive line is great when it's great, but it really sucks when it sucks. So, it's not like being a backup receiver where you kind of trot out there and do fun stuff in practice. You're grinding. And so there is some element of if you'll stick around and you'll do the work, that there's opportunities for you. So talk a little bit. You get into camp, like you said, you did kind of get moved around. You didn't know where you stood, and obviously I had a front row seat to all that, so I'm familiar. But you get into that JV portion of the season, which I don't know if everybody realizes that. I think that's a really underreported thing. Those games seem like they happen almost in total anonymity, but there's actually a decent amount of people there. Talk to me about, what is your first JV game down at Marietta?
Ohio Northern.
Oh, okay, I was there.
Yep, you were the first one.
That was the first one?
Yep.
And
it was supposed to be Marietta, but Springfield.
They were eating the dogs then.
Yeah, the cats and dogs were getting mauled in the streets.
That's right. That had all kinds of far-reaching ramifications.
That was crazy. I was practicing. I had to come home from campus, and I was practicing in Dayton. I drove from home to Dayton.
We could do a whole segment on the insanity that was.
Practice at Urbana U, RIP.
Yeah, brought them back. That was, Wittenberg. The way that was handled was interesting on all counts, but we'll stay off that topic. So, this JV game, talk us through it. How did that feel compared to the other things you've done athletically?
So it was kind of interesting. It was still a week before. I still didn't really know what position I was playing, and eventually I just had a meeting with the coach. We were having a center problem basically, and I told him, I was like, he's got a bunch of dudes to manage. He's got 17 of us freshmen and then another 10 linemen, so he's doing his own thing. I just reminded him, I was like, I played center, and then he's like, oh, right. So he gave me a shot at it. I played pretty good in practice, so I ended up being the starting JV center, and then I played really well against Ohio Northern. I think it was
How did game day, compared to just high school games and stuff?
Not as cool. I think it was a noon game at Ohio Northern, so we were loading the buses.
Beautiful day though.
It was really good.
And I thought it was fairly well attended.
Yeah,
The overhit. Like I brought my son Jameson with me, which I promised him I'd take him to the concession stand, so he was super excited. And just we're talking on the way up there, and I was like, "There's not gonna be very many people there."
Right.
There was a decent crowd. Like
It's
it
a
was
nice stadium.
I would say like a mid-level high school game. Like
Yeah.
it was not. Yeah, unattended, and it was not. Yeah, it was nice. Now we had to wait on the officials, so I forgot to tell them. But I was very impressed with the quality of play. I told your dad that at the time. Like it looked like decent football.
Yeah.
If you had rolled in and just didn't know anything, you'd say, "I'm watching a decent football game here." To me, I would have believed it was a varsity college game. Like there were some talented dudes.
For sure.
Some of the skill players for Wittenberg are legit.
Yeah.
Like these dudes, I don't know them. Obviously, you could talk about them. Like these were dudes in high school.
A lot of those dudes were playing varsity by the end of it, especially our freshman skill guys.
Well, your quarterback.
Quarterback played varsity. Our receiver was playing varsity. We had 2 dudes playing. Yeah, basically a lot of those dudes you saw in that game were varsity players by when it's all said and done. But
I thought you guys played hard too. Like I thought both sides played
it
hard.
was a fight.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it was chippy, which is
Yeah.
good for the fans. I really came away from that impressed, and I would encourage if anyone's ever on the fence about attending a JV D3 game, it's still good football. If you like football, you're going to see some good football. I thought it was fairly well disciplined too. Like I would expect to see some real janky stuff, like really some bad just discipline, but it really wasn't.
Yeah, there was a lot of good football players out there.
Your coaching is where it gets a little loose, right? Like you just don't have that many guys.
We got 6 coaches in general, and we only take we only take 2 like of our real coaches,
And these
and
are
then
young
like
dudes.
our best coach. Okay, one of our best coaches on our team is Coach Landers, Robert
Big
Landers.
Bob.
Yes.
Dude,
Yep.
he's a man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people know him. Bob Landers, Dayton Lane, I believe, right?
Yep.
Bob was a heck of a football player at Ohio State. Now, he does not look like Bob Landers of Ohio State.
Yeah.
He has lost all that weight. He could not play the 3 tech, or I don't know what he was, a 1 or a 3 for Ohio State. He couldn't play that today.
He
get
could play
run
for
over.
Wittenberg.
Now, he could. He might play defensive end and come off the edge now because he's cut up. But, it's how many games did you end up getting in?
So we were supposed to have 7. I think we ended up playing 5. So
Would you say that the existence of those games had a huge impact on your enjoyment of the season?
I would have struggled immensely if I didn't get to play at all. Especially playing D1 would have been cool, but it would have been a struggle for me. Like not getting any competitive feel and just being a scout team dummy the whole year would have stunk. And then it was just cool to be able to be like, because you don't really know how good of a football player you are until you play other people, like in a game-like situation. And then being able to walk away from games like the Ohio Northern game and being like, all right, I'm pretty good at football.
You beat the national champs.
We did beat
The
the
Ohio
national
State club
champs.
team.
Yeah.
I saw you liked one of my TikTok comments. I exist in the TikTok comments. I don't have social media, so that's the only place I can express my opinions. I don't do it on Garage Sports, but that someone had said that Ohio State team. Well, Zach Smith talked about it.
That's
Did you see
what
that in the
I thought was
podcast?
so
Like
funny.
Zach Smith, he obviously doesn't know what he's talking about. Obviously, he knows a ton of football. He said, they said, could that club team beat a D1 team? And he opened the door for it. And I said, I watched them lose to a Wittenberg JV team, and Wittenberg JV was impressive, but not going to beat a Division I team.
No.
It was pretty silly.
Yeah, it was I will say, dude, that they had some dudes that maybe could play D1.
No doubt.
That tight end
guy
was
here and there.
legit.
Oh, absolutely. I told your dad that tight end was a
He'd be
good
a day
player.
one starter.
Their left or right tackle was a Kenton kid. Because I got a hold of the roster. Well, so you get through. There's a little bit of surviving going on there because it's a grind. How did the school part go?
Actually, really good. Probably better than I thought it was going to go. I think it was a little bit easier for me than high school was. I think this sounds funny, but there was a legitimate element of not having to wake up at 6 a.m. versus waking up at 9 a.m. I just felt like I would go into class and be like, like I was awake and active.
And so much wasted time in high school.
Yeah.
Like you're there just to, and I say this as a teacher, like there's so much, and I think you'll see changes in the coming years and decades where this idea that we have to be there for 8 hours, and I get it as a teacher, like, you need to be at work, but as a kid, there's so much you're taking that's just not important.
Right.
busy work. And you're going to class. How many did you have? 4?
4, and I'm doing 5 this semester. So
Take a little more in the spring.
Yeah.
And obviously you guys are semesters, right?
Yep.
And you start up here in a week or so.
Yeah, I go back to 13th, so I got a little bit.
So then, weight room. How accountable is the off-season weight room program?
It's real. I think the best thing about Wittenberg so far has been the weight room program. I think they do a really good job. Our head guy, Coach Warren, he came from Army. He does a really good job. Like right now on my phone, I have a sheet of what they want us to be doing during the off season, like while we're not there. And then as soon as we get there, we'll be 3-4 days a week in the weight room. I think it was the first time in my football career where I don't know if I got stronger during the season, but I didn't lose any strength. Like I stayed the same strength level, and then right after the season, I was able to I'm the strongest I've ever been and all that. So I think they do a good job.
How do you feel, just because I know you and I coach you, your lower half, how do you feel like that has developed?
It's, again, the best it's ever been. It's not perfect still.
Probably what I would say, I'm not trying to tell your secrets, but it's what you didn't enjoy as a high school kid.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't enjoy squatting as much. Your body type's not really built for it. Like, some of us are built to squat, some of us aren't. You're probably not built to squat.
Definitely not built to squat. And, you play offensive line. Like, you have nagging stuff, like my hips, my ankles. None of my stuff
You've always
works.
kind of had trouble with your hips, right? Like,
I kind of
wasn't Mifsud supposed to loosen them up? Wasn't he your stretching coach there for a while?
He was supposed to, and he failed me.
Yeah.
So if he's on here, I'd like to thank Coach Misfit. He got me.
What was it with your hips? Like, they were just always tight?
My freshman year, I hurt him. Like, I had a hip flexor problem. I went and saw Braxton Miller's doctor. He told me I needed an MRI, and then I said no because I wanted to play JV football. And then it got better, but it never got like fully better. So it's like it still hinges a little bit and all that. But freshman year was crazy. It was like unbearable.
Well, you've always been a guy, I will say, that has avoided the training room, and I'm not saying like that as I recommend everyone avoid the training room, but you were never in high school, especially. You're going to deal with kids that are quick to go to the training room. I'm sure college is a little bit the same way, and they can find injuries in there. Now you can also need to, obviously, if you're injured, but you were always a guy that was scared to death they were going to hold you out, and that's there's times where you probably need to go in there, but it's also why you were chosen to be a center when you were a sophomore. Going back to when we made the decision to move you, I made the decision to move you to center. We wanted to make sure that we had a guy we could trust. And I always knew you'd go to center at Witt. I said it to you. I said it to your dad. I said it to anybody I talked to. Like, I just knew that the same qualities that made us move you to center was going to make them move you to center. Right. Because the thing about center, if someone hasn't coached O-line, you have to have someone you trust. Because the moment that dude is a training room kind of guy, and he's not really hurt, and he's finding injuries, you're screwed. Like, your quarterback you're without your partner. We saw it last night in the Ohio State game. It didn't hurt him, but I was shocked by how bad those snaps were.
Yeah.
Will Howard was going down for them repeatedly. Now, he did a heck of a job just acting like it never affected him. But it was, you were certainly a Hall of Fame caliber snapper in your time at Bell Fountain as a 2-year starter. Really, we talked about it before. I don't know if you had a bad snap, it was like 1 or 2. Get one over their head, right?
Sophomore year.
That was like the only one.
Yeah, at Ben Logan, it was actually that same game, but 2 back-to-back.
Both over Riley's head?
Yeah, it got me with the 6'5", 6 foot
transition. That's excusable, though. Yeah, it's different when you go from a 6'5" to a 6 foot guy.
Yeah.
That does make a difference.
But I think those were, I had 3 bad snaps. It was 2 against Ben Logan, and then we were getting mollywopped by J.A., and I was frustrated, and I snapped it into the end zone.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's the one I remember.
Yeah.
So, looking ahead, if you had to guess, and maybe you don't feel comfortable answering this, if you had to guess if there's a depth chart, which I would guess there is, on a board somewhere, where do you think you are right now?
I kind of know where I am. We had to enter the meetings. Maybe not something I should say, but Wittenberg, sorry.
They're not listening.
All right, good. It's between me and one other guy. Is that what it is at the end of the day? The dude's going to be a senior. He's... we're different players for sure. He's bigger than me.
Where's he from?
Indianapolis.
Okay.
So, but he's definitely a program guy. His brother plays on the team as well. So, but I bring different things to the table than he does. I think I snap the ball better than really anybody anywhere. So yeah, but my goal is, to get to 250 playing weight right now. I was about 235 at the end of the season. I'm 245 right now. So my goal is to get to like 255, 260, and then lose some of that and get to playing shape. But if I can get to 250, they'll kind of lose the excuse that I'm not big enough. I was the skinniest lineman on the team this year, actually. Fun fact.
Lightest.
Yeah, by not that close, by like 10 pounds.
So you feel like you're in the 2 deep,
Yeah.
which you're a varsity player at that point. So you think that you're going to get on the field. I mean, barring something unforeseen. Question is, can you get yourself into that starting role? How do the guards look?
So we had a freshman guard this year. He's from Wayne.
True freshman.
He didn't start, but he was pushing for a starting spot by the end of it.
Pretty good player.
Yeah, he's a good player. He benches 225 for like 25.
Oh wow.
He's wrestler. He's good. He's gonna start next year. We're returning a starter. He's gonna be a senior from, I forget where he's from, Columbus School. He's coming off a torn ACL though, but he's a 2-year starter at this point.
You think the center path is a little easier than the guard path?
Yeah, and basically at this point, my coach told me you're gonna be center.
Right.
So.
Well, I agree. Obviously,
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think it's where you belong. I think that it fits your skill set. The fact that you're such a good snapper and you're high IQ, you can set the scheme, and the fact that you can lead, it's just so much better. And in any weaknesses you have, which we all have them, they've got center's a spot where you kind of like hide them. Whereas in, like I always say, a tackle. Tackle's tough. Like if God didn't bless you with the right feet, there's only so many drills you can do to get you can get better, but if you can't get that, you're just never, those ends, man, they're tough, and that job is really tough.
Especially, we got a lot of athletic dudes. I know it's Division III, but there's a lot of athletic dudes.
Well, you don't have to preface it with that. Anybody that understands knows that Division III football is really good. It's not Division I, but it's a far cry from high school. It is a much better product than what we see in high school. And even the Wittenberg JV game proved that to me, that there were, like I said, there was dudes handling the ball that you'd say, that dude was a star at his high school.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the thing I always try to emphasize to people is the whole, I'm going to play college football. And I think it's great. Anybody wants to go play college football. And even if they do it and say, hey, I don't know if I'll ever get on the field, but I want to do it, I'm going to itch, that's great. We have kind of taken that, though, and kind of like twisted it, kind of like we do everything. And it's become a social media thing. Like, hey, I'm going to play college football. And 3 months later, it's we don't talk about that anymore.
Right.
You're not on that path. You're on the truly go there, put your head down, fight through it, and there's not fame and fortune on the other side, but there's still lots of. You'd say your experience has been extremely positive.
Absolutely, yeah.
And your exposure to other kids, other coaches.
Yeah, and then I want to coach. That's the biggest thing for me. Being able to pick Coach Davies' mind, and then honestly picking Coach Lander's mind, just like, even though he's a defensive coach, seeing what he's teaching them and trying to think about ways to counter that. That's the biggest difference between college and high school is, like, I know you would coach it, like hand fighting and stuff. You never kind of had to do it. You just there was hand fighting, like, nonstop. You are always swatting your hands in and out, especially with how well our defensive line does it. So I think it's just going to make me a better coach when it's time for that and all that.
Well, there's no doubt. I'm very jealous of people that play college football that coach, because I always say, like, we've had guys over the years like, well, this guy played. I'm like, well, hey, let's not downplay that. If he played 4 years of college football, I'm not talking about the old show up for 3 months and quit for the trick knee. But if he played, even if he wasn't on the field, he learned a bunch about football because you are living and dying football for 4 years of your life. Yeah, it's going to make you so much better. You're going to be exposed to things that will just come naturally to you. And when you start coaching, you just be way, way ahead of the game. And the credibility part. It does. I've certainly had to battle through that myself. I didn't have any natural credibility as a coach. I couldn't say, hey, I started 3 years at Wittenberg, so I had to prove myself. The nice thing about you is, let's assume you are going to play. I think it's safe to say you're going to play varsity football at Wittenberg, whether it's this coming year or your last 2 years. That's a nice card to play. Like, hey, this worked at Wittenberg, and kids will listen, and they'll give you an initial respect that maybe they wouldn't give you otherwise.
Right.
And you do want to be a teacher?
I do, and I'm actually double majoring now. I'm doing business management and special education. I kind of just worked out. Fountain got me right with. I took a bunch of college business classes online there, and then I got to Wittenberg, and they were like, "You should just double major because you can do it in the same amount of time for the same amount of money." And I was like, "Okay." And I just
sound like a DECA guy to me.
I was a DECA guy 1 year, 4th place out of 6 people. So.
Yeah, hey, that's not bad, but we seem to be going through the business teachers lately, so you might be able.
Yeah.
I know that's not and who knows, but it's hard to say. The nice thing about teaching right now is you'll find a job. It's people are heading in the other direction. A lot of people are moving to other things, and it's still a good job. I mean, I'm in the middle of this day, like 13 of 16 straight days off. And now there's talking snowstorm. I don't know if you've heard this.
I'm now.
I don't know if your dad knows that there may be there's possibility of like half a foot of snow on Sunday. We could turn this 16 days into like 17 or 18.
There you go. Yeah.
There ain't a whole lot of jobs in America. There are a lot of other people be grinding through the snow, scraping windshields and stuff, and we'll be sleeping in. Well, hey, obviously I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
I'm excited. I think it's awesome, and I don't anything I've said about I always want to. It's guys like you that make me say, hey, just the whole I'm going to play college. Well, what are you really doing? You're really going to play college football. It's the real deal, and your whole class is kind of that way. It's been nice. I mean, Harper had a good year and legit was getting on the field at Marietta. Chris seemed like it went really well at Dominican. Hayden went to a little bigger school, and it sounds like it went reasonably well, though. And he's biting off a big bite there at Duquesne. Riley, shot the moon at OU and went from a walk-on to hopefully somebody says that he's on scholarship soon.
He wants to play, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it went really, really well for him. So that's all exciting, and obviously there's a reason we were so good 2 years ago and took the eventual state champions to the brink. Really had them beat. I don't want to go down that path because I don't want to get depressed tonight. But nice having you back. We miss your hot takes. I mean, hot takes are good for podcasts. We will next Thursday, we'll be back here. I think we got wrestling coach Andy Haverston of West Liberty Salem, I believe, is going to be our guest. He's an OU guy. Speaking of OU, he was a varsity wrestler at OU. I don't know if people realize that, but West Liberty's got a D1 wrestler as their head coach. So he's doing a pretty good job down there. I think he's coming on. Of course, we'll be previewing that Ohio State game. We'll hopefully keep this party rolling, some more Ohio State stuff. But we'll be watching for you here in a few months as Wittenberg gets back at it. Certainly want to thank Brian Harmon and Craft Emporium. Thank Hoyt Buckingham, who's got his finger on the mouse as we speak, and definitely Paul Newland, top of Ohio Radon. Hopefully somebody listens to this and calls 937-935-2806. Get Paul out to your place and let him check your radon. And so for Jack Varner and Brian Harmon, we'll see you next Thursday. Why you called in the middle of it? I thought, is somebody dead? As somebody... No.
So we had 2 on.